Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back to another edition of Kal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is the one and only Rob McConnell. Now, folks, as I say at the beginning of every episode, pretty much, because it's true, the point of Kal's Corner is to cover everything from politics to the paranormal. That's a wide variety of subjects. Last week, we were talking about Iran and the targeted killings that American President Donald Trump had ordered over about 7 months ago, but you wouldn't know that if you watched the lamestream media, which of course loves to bash Trump even when he's right. But, that's another show. We've talked about that stuff before. Now, for today's show, we're going to talk about a very different subject from Iran and politics. We're going to keep it within the realm of the so-called paranormal, and we're going to talk about UFOs and some other stuff related to the paranormal. But let me go ahead and give you kind of a foundational perspective here. In fact, what I'm going to call this show this is my working title for it, The Right Perspective on a Different Perspective. And you'll understand the double entendre there in that title by the time this show is over. Fully sourced, provable. You can verify it, what I'm about to tell you. Now, first of all, let's start with what subject are we talking about? Well, we're going to talk about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, or what some people call flying saucers. To quote Stanton Friedman, he said some UFOs are somebody else's spacecraft, meaning not ours from Earth, some other alien race. Fine, I understand that view. Most people who are into the UFO subject also accept that view. They believe that we are being visited by aliens from another planet or ultra-dimensional beings or whatever. The point is they're not Earthlings, not from Earth. Fine. Now, I get accused. Well, let me back up. I started studying UFO reports on October 19th, 1973. That makes me no longer the young, smart thing in the room, for lack of a better term. In fact, almost everybody I'm dealing with now, unless they're longtime friends, tends to be younger than me. It's a weird feeling. Anyway, to make a long story short, when I got into the subject on October 19th, 1973, because one day in class, in sixth grade, all the students, without exception, brought in newspaper clippings about UFOs. We had to, every day, bring in a newspaper clipping, and we had to summarize it for the teacher in about 30 seconds or a minute. She'd go around the room, each student had to do it, and you got 1 point each day for doing it. If you didn't do it, you didn't get a point. And at the end of the month, if you didn't have, 20 points, it would add up after a couple of months and it would harm your grade. If you were an A student, you'd be bumped down to a B student because the total number of points that you were expected to earn based on the grading scale would be affected if you just didn't bother summarizing news articles as part of class, okay? Well, my parents were the only parents who didn't subscribe to a newspaper. My father actually told me he's not going to pay 10 cents a day for a paper when he watches the evening news. And I said, well, Dad, that hurts me because I have to do this for class. He wouldn't budge. So what I would do is before the class started, I'd meet with my friends and they would give me newspaper clippings and I'd memorize them real quick so I could summarize them like a newscaster. And that later led to my ability, apparently, to lecture and speak and stuff. I started speaking and lecturing at age 13 after I met Stanton Friedman in May of 1975. I saw him lecture. Two things surprised me. One is I knew everything he had talked about, which surprised me. Here I am, at that point, 11 years old or 13 years old. And then I thought, well, I could do that. I'd never seen a lecture before. The idea that somebody could go around the country and be paid to talk, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So I started lecturing in June. And it was, just weeks after meeting Stanton Friedman. And I got 2 awards, top in the school, one for speaking and the other from my science teacher who appreciated my extracurricular interest in studying the issue of extraterrestrial life. Even made a little UFO model for me. They called me up in class. There was applause, all that stuff, gave me the award. And that began my so-called lecture career. Over the summer, I took advanced science courses because I loved science, couldn't get enough of it, and continued lecturing. And by the time I'm out of high school and all that stuff, I've been on TV, radio, and the papers. I did a lecture with Stanton Friedman. I invited him to speak at Kennedy High School. Fundraiser. He kept his part of the money. I donated my money to our class. The rest is history. Those newspaper articles have started to appear online now, only because I bothered posting them. And it shows Stanton Friedman and I right there doing our thing. And you see in one photo a look on my face as I'm looking at Stanton Friedman. And you can see that I'm not a happy camper. I'm shocked at what I'm seeing and hearing. Now, when Stanton Friedman is at my house in Fremont on Piper Street, 4543 Piper Street, I still remember the address. I have no idea who lives there now, but you can Google it on Street View and find out. The house, last time I checked years ago, hasn't changed. And he stands over at the house. The media is there all day. I was very in demand, for lack of a better term, to be in the media because I always ran this story about this smart kid doing all this stuff, the atomic bomb design, all that other stuff that UFO nuts and my critics deny, even though they're full of, they weren't there, they weren't involved. And more importantly, these newspaper articles written at the time, decades before the internet existed, prove it really did happen. In fact, I was recruited to work at Lawrence Livermore Lab, not because I knew how to cook a decent meal, it's because I knew my stuff. So anyway, I'm looking at Friedman, and he has a movie coming out called UFOs Are Real. It's a movie you can still get today, and it was the first debut of the Roswell UFO crash data. And if you look at UFOs Are Real, which Stanton Friedman was not only the main scriptwriter for, as I recall, he was some sort of producer with Brandon Chase. Do this little experiment, folks. Take the movie and write down the names of all the top cases Friedman endorsed. You'll find out that most of them have not withstood the test of time. And unfortunately, Friedman died going to his grave still promoting these myths. And that's a problem. It doesn't matter who it is. If I did the same thing, I should be held accountable. It doesn't matter who it is, folks. What matters is getting the truth out there in a way that the public, when they're trying to search for this stuff now on the internet, because that's what people use. They don't really use libraries anymore the way they used to. You need to be able to source things in a way where people can verify the truth for themselves. And then they're going to decide what they're going to decide. You can't control that. The old saying, people say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. That's not true. You can make a horse drink water. What you can't do is guarantee he will like that water. That's a different issue, different animal, literally. So this is what happened. Friedman and I are talking to the reporters that day. I'd invited them to my house for an all-day press event. And we had scheduled time for each of us to talk to the reporters. And the San Francisco Examiner's there, huge newspaper, and the Oakland Tribune are there. And because the event, each reporter overstayed their time, they ran into each other. And that was a little awkward because I didn't tell each reporter, oh, yeah, you've got this thing. And you're just going to be one of several that day, because sometimes reporters say, well, if you're not going to give me special treatment, I'm not going to cover you. So I had to play politics, and everyone ended up getting their sound bites and all that. But while both reporters and papers were there were photographers, and they captured on film, printed those photos of what was going on. And what happened, as I quoted in an article in an earlier issue last year of the X-Zone Chronicles newsletter that Rob publishes, the Stanton Friedman that I knew, I quoted from these articles and things that Stan had said. They were captured for historical prosperity, for lack of a better term, the historical record. That's a better way of putting it. Prosperity, posterity, whatever. No, it's just the historical record. Let's not judge the value of it. But it did happen. It was recorded. And Friedman made all these statements like they were God's given truth, which I had a problem with as a teenager. I still have a problem with them because they were the beginning of a split between Friedman and I, and he was my idol in the UFO field, so to speak, more than Hynek was, because I didn't know Hynek that well yet. You know, Hynek was on the East Coast. I lived near Friedman, went over his house all the time. He mentored me. As I got to know Hynek, I gravitated more towards Hynek and Bill Moore and that, because I was done with Stan and his shtick. And let me start summarizing some of it and why it's relevant to the rest of the show, which is not about Stanton Friedman, and we're not here to bash him. I'm saying again, because it's true, that I owe Stanton Friedman a lot. If it weren't for him, I probably would have never lectured. I can't say that because I can't go back in time and see, but he was my inspiration to do it. I emulated him. I thought he was just like the Carl Sagan of ufology. Turns out it wasn't even close to the truth. I do appreciate the fact that he raised awareness of the issue, made us think about things, you know, like, are we alone and so on. But when you do it through myths, and I'm sorry to say lies, and then accuse people of research by proclamation, when you're doing it yourself, that is the very definition of a hypocrite. And I don't care who it is. If my mom behaved that way, I would tell her to her face, because she raised that kind of son, Mom, you're being a hypocrite. But my mom isn't like that, by the way. But I'm just showing you what I would do. And if anybody doubts my sincerity on sticking to my convictions, I will remind them respectively of my brother's own shooting. I refused to help him when he was shot by the police because I believed the police were right and he was wrong. When I found out that they found exculpatory evidence and threw the case out that indicated my brother was innocent and there was a lie and a cover-up, I went to war. We went to war as a family. He was found innocent and didn't go to prison for a crime he never committed. And of course, I was willing to help him. But because I thought he was guilty, I wouldn't. That's how strong I stuck to my views. Now, after the break here, we're going to come back and I'm going to summarize a couple of these claims, which are still problems today. And then we'll explain why it's relevant to the show.
Patty Conklin grew up in Brooktondale, New York with a unique ability. Unlike others, she could see how the vibration of words and emotions affected the physical body. She discovered how to release stored emotion and facilitate healing. This began today's Conklin method of cellular cleansing. The private practice grew with tremendous results, as did her reputation. More and more people sought her out, bringing her into the home for healing. She soon realized she could even teach this to others, and they could shift perception and thus prevent illness from occurring. Patty Conklin quickly became a frequent keynote speaker, and she developed a curriculum for teaching the Conklin method of cellular cleansing. For more information, visit pattyconklin.com. PATTICONKLIN, pattyconklin.com, or call 404-474-0086. That's 404-474-0086.
Mission Evolution is dedicated to the well-being of the planet and animals, as well as the evolution of humankind. One major factor threatening all three is increasing toxicity. Heavy metals and other environmental toxins are poisoning our bodies, deteriorating our brains, blocking our spiritual connection, and shortening our lives. Yet these poisons are extremely difficult to remove. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, and I recently became aware of a product created from the marriage of nature and nanotechnology called Vitality. It's formulated from zoolite, whose crystalline structure binds toxins, gently carrying them out of the body. The light is only as clear as the window through which it shines. Clear your body, shine your light into the world. Visit vitalityhappens.com for a 20% discount. Enter code PATHHOME.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Welcome back to the second segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Back to what I was saying. When I was with Stanton Friedman all day, and again, we knew each other very well, and we were at the press events. He's promoting his movie, talking about Roswell, all that stuff, fine. But then he says that the space shuttle is going up in space. He was right. The Enterprise was going up. And he said, once that happens, that will bring down the UFOs. This is a quote. And I'm like, do you really think so? I was shocked. He said, absolutely. And that's a quote. And I said, why? And the press is watching this because they're watching the back and forth. And he says, because basically, at that point, we will have joined the Galactic Federation, and there's rules up there, like tribal warfare is not allowed. You're not going to bring your nukes up into space. And that will bring down the UFOs, because we will have joined, essentially, the Cosmic Galactic Federation. I'm not making these words up. He spoke like this. It's quoted in some of these articles, okay? So I'm like, I can't believe I'm hearing this from Stanton Friedman. I know he's not pranking me or anybody. He really believes this. So he used to run around and say, you know, the favorite pastime of human beings is tribal warfare. Okay, I understand where he's coming from on that. But this idea that the Federation is out there, like Star Trek, and because we suddenly discover warp drive, we're going to be part of the thing, and now we have to get with the thing like a prime directive, all that. First of all, it wasn't warp drive, it was a space shuttle. And the space shuttle is so advanced. Let's put this in perspective. Although it's a marvelous piece of technology, it's basically a big glider with a rocket on it that gets a boost on a rocket. And then the rocket is jettisoned. It falls back to Earth. They reuse two of the nodules there. But the plane itself, the space shuttle, when it goes down to Earth, it has no power. It's just gliding in, and it needs a parachute to help land safely to slow it down. It's not the Starship Enterprise landing and going warp and going fast. It can't even make it to the friggin' moon, folks, about 250,000 miles away. That's how advanced the space shuttle was. It was a big glider, basically, more or less. So I'm really shocked at this because I'm thinking I'm in high school. And if this is presenting me a problem, problem hearing this and seeing this kind of thinking, which is just outright loopy, it's ufology, which means it's not derivable from the data. Ufology is a scientific study of UFO data. Ufology, as I remind people all the time, and Friedman told me this definition, which I find was ironic, never heard of the term till he told me. He used to call the work of Phil Klass ufology, quote unquote. He'd explain why. He was wrong a lot of times, but I understood the point that ufology is when you make statements or conclusions about UFOs that are not derivable from the data. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay? And Zeta Reticulans are an example of ufology. They were never even ufology. Never. And we'll come back to that. So Friedman's saying all this stuff. He's talking about Roswell, alien bodies, Jesse Marcel. And I'm having a problem with this because I can see as a teenager in high school that this just doesn't make sense, okay? So, all right, well, fine. Then we lectured and all that, and I'm starting to study Roswell and everything, and I'm starting to see problems with it, okay? And this is where anyone else other than the 4 original Roswell researchers are really full of you-know-what when they start talking about Roswell, because they weren't there. They weren't involved, okay? And some of the things they say are ufology when it's not just outright fraud. I'm sorry. Now, here's what happened and where I'm getting at with this point. The first UFO case that was considered to be smoking gun evidence that we were being visited, as far as alien abduction cases go, is the very famous Betty and Barney Hill case. Again, the Betty and Barney Hill, they were returning home from a vacation trip. They were going through the White Mountains of New Hampshire. They saw an object in the sky. They pulled over. They looked at it through binoculars. They claimed they saw a row of double windows, some humanoid-like figures standing behind it. They got the feeling they were going to be abducted or kidnapped, okay? And then what happened, or, taken, or whatever term you want to use, captured, that's the name of Friedman's book on it. And then Betty Hill claims they were given a physical examination similar to what you get on Earth here. They took hair, skin samples. They apparently were exploring Barney's mouth, found out his false teeth came out. We're all excited over that. Went to Betty trying to yank her teeth out, didn't understand the difference. Come on, folks. Advanced aliens who are smart enough to build a spaceship to come here 37 light years away from Zeta Reticuli, they don't know what false teeth are? Hello? I'm sorry, doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. But let's say the aliens were just stupid in that regard. Let's say they don't have teeth. Who knows? We're just pulling stuff out of our butt because we're speculating, right? There's no evidence here to prove anything one way or another. So what happens is the Hill case is just another abduction claim story, except one key area which Friedman championed. And to this day, Kathleen Martin does the same as Betty Hill's niece. Not that she has a vested interest there, right, folks? Wink, wink. Anyway, so Friedman says it's the star map, folks. It's a star map. Marjorie Fish, an amateur astronomer, God bless her, very nice, sincere woman, she makes a series of models using beads and string, different sized beads to represent different types of stars, red dwarfs, giants, yellow main sequence stars. She comes up with a scale, and she builds these different models, and she comes up with a pattern of stars, generically called the constellation of Reticulum, that she says it looks like it matches the Hill star map from a perspective of Zeta Reticuli looking back towards the Earth, not from Earth looking out towards Zeta Reticuli. And you can only get that view if you've been out in space, especially since the constellation Reticulum is only visible south of the equator. The hills have never been outside south of the equator. They've never been outside the U.S. Again, this is the stuff Friedman popped off in his sleep. But in October of 1976, ironically, as I had just authored a report for my 8th grade teacher on UFOs called UFOs, the Massive UFO Evidence. It was over 200 pages I typed up for my teacher. Again, I had teachers who made a point to always disagree with me, even if I said water was wet, because they forced me to prove them wrong or argue, in Socrates style. And to this day, God bless them for doing it. We're still in touch on Facebook. You can see our back and forth because we disagree on politics sometimes, it depends on what it is. And I'm eternally grateful that these teachers did that. I was able to finish eligible, graduate in only 3 years, top student, all that other fun stuff. I just couldn't get enough data. That's why I took 8 foreign languages in my first year in high school, ended up majoring in German on it. That's why I had to laugh later when, the Meyer nuts said I didn't speak any German. Well, that's news to the Swiss I dealt with as the people I went undercover with in Switzerland over there to bust the Meyer cult. So anyway, there's this star map, and Marjorie Fish has made a star map, and it took her 5 years to figure this stuff out. And Friedman's like, yeah, this is proof that, aliens we not only know this happened, we know where they were from. Zeta 1, Zeta 2 reticuli, G2 type spectral stars similar to our sun. You could swap stars and we would never know the difference, so to speak. So all of this seemed to fit. It was like wonderful stuff. And the skeptics couldn't really refute it. Until one day, Bob Schaefer came along and he found out about another astronomer named Charles Atterberg, who essentially did a version of Fish's work, but he used later data, the next update of the Gliese star catalog, which was the most comprehensive catalog of stars at that time. And each time this gets revved, the data is more accurate. We discover new things. That's the way science evolves. So using the new data, he was able to show that his map was better than Marjorie Fish's. And the fact that there's any map other than Fish's that works and is better relegates the Hill case to being a Rorschach plot. It's another abduction story with no proof. None. The map is irrelevant because it's not an alien star map of anything. It can't be mapped to that using the most accurate data. So I read this in Official UFO magazine. I was in touch with the editors, and I was upset. And I went to Stan Friedman. I said, have you seen this article by Schaefer? I don't even know who Schaefer is until now. He was an acquaintance of Phil Klass. I knew who Phil Klass was. I knew Phil Klass. Actually beat him in debates on KOME radio. Phil told me later when I met him secretly at his house that he had no idea he was debating a kid. I had to laugh at that. But yeah, I kicked his butt on KOME radio on our debate. It's a matter of record out there because he couldn't disprove a lot of this UFO stuff. That doesn't mean it was proven aliens either. But skeptics cannot afford the luxury of saying they know what something is when they really don't know that. And in the case of Phil Klass and the cases we're talking about, the data was not in to prove it wasn't aliens. It wasn't there to prove it was either, but he ended up being right. And his point was very valid, still true today, that, you must only look at the alien explanation once you have eliminated everything else. That's Basic Science 101, and he is correct on that. He also told me point blank, as the senior avionics editor for Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine, that if he ever found any proof, he would get an honorary Pulitzer. So yeah, he wanted it to be real, but never found any evidence it was. Now, what does all this have to do with the main message in the last part of this show? We'll get to that after the commercial break here. And that's why you'll understand the title, The Right Perspective on a Different Perspective.
Audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Join Patty Conklin and Healing Within Radio each week. More than entertainment, Healing Within offers educational, useful tools for everyday life. Listen for help overcoming fear, anxiety, and depression. Patty knows about eliminating cancer, MS, dementia, Parkinson's, and a host of illnesses that we face every day. Life can be good. Life is good. All you need are simple tools to start changing your life. Start right now by visiting pattyconklin.com, PATTICONKLIN. No matter where you are in the world, you can work with Patty through Skype, phone, or in person, visiting one of her retreats in Georgia. Visit pattyconklin.com today or call our offices at 404-474-0086. That's pattyconklin.com or call 404-474-0086.
Coming soon to the X Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who would like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Kal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is the one and only Rob McConnell. Now let's get back to what we were talking about here. Again, with the Hill case, I was upset to find out that it just wasn't what Stan had told me. And I thought, well, maybe there's new data he just doesn't know. So I told Stan, I said, you're telling me Schaefer's wrong, Atterberg's wrong, Fish is right, this is noisy, negativists, quote unquote, all the other shtick he'd say. Stan, I'll be the guy in the middle. I'll be the glue. I'll be the grease between the wheels. I will be in touch with all sides. And we'll find out what the truth is. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. He didn't really care if I did it or not. So I kept my word. Plus, I think the proper way to do research is when you have, it's kind of like if you go to the doctor and the guy says, well, you've got a disease. Okay, well, if a doctor tells you anything serious one way or another, you need to get a second opinion. If that second opinion disagrees with the first, you need to go after a third. And you never go for an even number of opinions because then you can end up with a stalemate. And you don't want agree to disagree when it comes to science. This is all common sense. And if I know this in high school, then damn it, a nuclear physicist who worked for TRW, who claims he had clearances, blah, 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 should damn well know better. So I said, I'll do the work. So I went home. Started typing on my Smith Corona typewriter. Still have the letters from the 70s. They're beyond dispute. Real history matters. You can't take it out of the universe. You can only lie and deny it if you want to do that. That is everybody's right. That doesn't make it right. So for over 1 year, by snail mail, there was no internet, no email. You had to type a letter. I always had a carbon copy, put it in my files, had my own file system I made up. Wrote thousands and thousands of letters in high school to the point where I'd get anywhere from 3 to 10 pieces of mail a day drove my stepfather nuts. He's like, is this my house or yours? Anyway, I wrote to Atterberg, the astronomer, dealt with the guy directly. We became friends. And after 1 year of writing every week, sometimes a couple of times a week, he lived back in Maryland. I lived in the Bay Area. I took my thick file, which has been found. I saw it for the first time in decades when I was in India. That's when I said, we're going to do the project, the Zeta Reticuli, conspiracy, capital C, capital O, capital N, because it is a con. You've been lied to. I'm just being polite and blunt. That Friedman knew the truth the whole time. I was there. I can prove it. I've got the files. And one of the letters, more than one, says, Friedman's ducking me. I'm going to go over his house and surprise him because I'm not going to accept this. So I take my file to Stan Friedman's house. We go down in his office in the basement in Union City. And by the way, I ended up living 2 blocks up from where he did. And I said, Stan, he's right. It's all here. Everything you told me, I threw at him, and he has destroyed it. Plus a bunch of other stuff you didn't even think about. I knew Carl Sagan. I knew all these people. So I took all their stuff and threw it at Atterberg, because if Atterberg's right, no problem to defend the data, right? Defend the science. Friedman tokenly flipped through it. About 20, 30 seconds go by. He then hands the file back to me politely and says, I don't know. I'm not an astronomer. And at that point, I'm livid, because it's like, how dare you do this? You're not an astronomer, but you're a good enough astronomer to hype the fish map, which has now been destroyed with more accurate data. But you're not a good enough astronomer to comment or talk about Atterberg when literally claim by claim, which you told me to write up and throw the book at him, quote unquote, and he's destroyed you and all your arguments to the point where I don't endorse this anymore. I can't. It's just not true. Well, that was the beginning of the end between Stan and I. It wasn't over yet, because another chapter happened. The second one was actually good. Friedman told me, I know you're exposing Meyer, you're taking him out. Unfortunately, the Meyer segment is the last 5 minutes of my movie. He then showed me files that proved that Stan had argued passionately with Brandon Chase not to put anything about Meyer in there at all. And if Meyer was going to be mentioned, because it was a hot case at the time in '79, the book UFO Contact from the Pleiades had come out, that fraud book. And he said, this is good for viewers and ratings and sales. We're going to do it. Not Friedman, but the producer. And Friedman was mad over that, and he was right to be mad. So it wasn't Friedman's fault. Let's be clear that the Meyer segment is at the end, stuffed in there. That was a last-minute thing. Okay, I understand that, Stan. Thanks for telling me. Won't be held against you by anybody with half a brain. But the other cases are a problem. You have endorsed cases that even I know in high school are a hoax. For example, there's a very interesting short video in there. It's from a 16-millimeter movie shot by a pilot, Lee Hansen, over Santa Catalina Island in 1966. I think the date was April 1st. I'm not absolutely sure about that. If it is, maybe we know why this was done. And it shows what appears to be a metallic object that is saucer or kind of dome-shaped saucer with a dome on it, landing or flying with the Santa Catalina Mountains behind it. And wow, this is pretty clear for UFO video, more clear than, ones that had been around before, which we knew were real. We just didn't know what they showed. We knew they weren't hoaxes. I'm thinking of the Great Falls, Montana, Nicholas Mariana film of 1950, the Tremonton, Utah, so-called UFO group of objects flying, 16 of them roughly or something like that. Tremonton, Utah, 1952, taken by Delbert Newhouse, who was in the Navy at the time. Those turned out to be seagulls. Anyway, Friedman thought that was a real flying saucer being filmed. Turns out it was a Cessna airplane that was filmed in such a way that the metallic reflection camouflaged the protrusion of the wings. I know that because I saw the computer enhancements that were done at JPL by scientists like Dr. Bob Nathan, who is one of the fathers of computer image enhancement processing. If he'll be honest about it, and I think he will, honest guy. I had the honor of meeting him one time during one of Bob Kiviat's productions we're working on in LA. And he says it's a Cessna airplane, even identified the model. And he's right. And nobody to this day accepts that as a real piece of evidence. But you'd never know that talking to Stanton Friedman. Now, Friedman endorsed my Meyer book. In fact, he said, this is the only Prometheus book I will ever endorse. And it's true. He never endorsed any other ones. But he stood by my work on the Meyer case. Fine. Again, we agreed to disagree over the Hill case, but here's what broke our relationship. And this happened starting in high school. Again, after I'd lectured with him and spent more time with him. What happened is a book in 1980 came out called The Roswell Incident, written by Bill Moore and Charles Berlitz of the Berlitz Language School fame. Friedman told me all about that book, and he made it clear that he is the one, not Bill Moore, who had discovered Roswell. He had met Jesse Marcel while appearing on a radio show in Louisiana, and Marcel said, I recovered one of them flying discs. He didn't say aliens from Mars or anything like that. In fact, Jesse Marcel went to his grave, this is a fact, saying he didn't believe in little green men. Now, you have to think about that, folks. Here's the officer who recovered the debris from Roswell. Debris that we are told was extraterrestrial, complete with maybe 2 alien bodies, 3, one of which may have been alive, if you believe the nonsense of the lore about this. And Friedman, of course, believed there were bodies. Jesse Marcel never saw any. And he says, I have never believed in little green men. In other words, he went to his grave not thinking that there were aliens involved. On Roswell, you'd never know that reading any of the books on Roswell today, except probably mine. Because I am one of the 4 original Roswell researchers. And there's nothing anybody can do or say to change that historical fact. Even Kevin Randall, when he's attacked me over Roswell, and we'll get to that in a moment, he wasn't one of the 4 original Roswell researchers. Bill Moore was, I was, Friedman was. And until you're one of the original 4, it's kind of like, to use a bad analogy, being part of the Fab Four. I have no time for people who weren't part of that band to tell me what happened. They weren't there. They weren't involved. In the case of Randall and others who went on to write best-selling books, popular books, they didn't even jump on the bandwagon until years later. Well, that's their issue. So what happened is I'm with Bill Moore, and we're meeting with the press again in December. After I graduate from high school, he's on his tour. We meet. He agrees to bankroll, my books and stuff. And he shows me for the first time the uncropped images of the Roswell debris. And we're showing them to the media, okay? And that article was published. So I don't care if anybody believes me or not. They can, with their skepticism on that. It's out there. It is a part of history. And after the break here, I will tell you what was in that article and why it broke my relationship with Stanton Friedman and why it's relevant to the proper perspective on a different perspective today.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hides' life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
Welcome back, folks, to the fourth and final segment here on this show. Again, this is Cal's Corner. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. So now that we're in the fourth and final segment here, folks, we're going to come in for a landing here. I'm going to tie all this in together, and then you'll finally understand where I'm getting at on all this. And I've given you a lot of foundational material that is historical fact. It can easily be verified. I got the newspaper clippings, all original letters, all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what reaction to this, if any, there is. Either people will deny it, which is their problem, or they'll face it and make an adjustment and life goes on. It's up to them. Not my circus, not my monkeys. All right. So what happens is I'm with Bill Moore, and he's on tour promoting his best-selling book, The Roswell Incident. It is a bestseller. And the reason Charles Berlitz was attached to the project is because of the Berlitz name. And as Stanton Friedman told me when the 4-page outline was submitted, and I think Kevin Randall will verify this because I think Stan also told him this too, and I think Stan has put this in writing, as I recall, that basically they didn't even look at the outline. They just said, how much do you want for it? And I think it was $100,000 or something like that. So basically by co-authoring with Berlitz, Bill Moore was able to guarantee to get a book contract. It would be a bestseller. The Berlitz name was popular around the world, and they had written a book prior to that called The Philadelphia Experiment, which again did very well, and it was about the Philadelphia Experiment. So I got to know Bill Moore, and I became very good friends with him. I became closer to him than I was ever with Stanton Friedman, because Bill Moore, when I saw him, he was always honest with me. I helped him financially. He helped me. We even smoked weed together, okay? So we were close. And the problem was Stanton Friedman. Friedman was jealous, as Kevin Randall has confirmed, independent of anything I say. I haven't talked to Randall about our Friedman horror stories. We will, hopefully, soon. He was jealous of him. He had penis envy. I'm sorry, folks. I'm being blunt here. He said, that should have been my book. He tells me this. And it's like, Stan, write your own book. And he later did. And he deceived Bill Moore. Bill Moore went public with it, cut off all relations, called him a money-grubbing type, and basically lied to him about having the contract for Crash at Corona. He didn't respond to Bill Moore for 6 or 7 months, said he was busy. And Bill Moore was trying to find out what was going on because Bill Moore had connections with publishers. He knew what Stan was doing. He was asking Stan what was going on to compare what Stan was telling him. And he knew that he was doing an end around him. Stan Friedman tried to sabotage every major Roswell book that I know of, including Randall's. When I do compare my stories with Kevin Randall one day, if he ever wants to do that, I'm happy to. I'll tell him some other stuff Stan did to him that I know that he did because Stan talked to me about it. You see, Stan and I talked about Roswell after my book came out. And actually, I'm jumping ahead. Let me back up a bit. So I'm with Bill Moore. This is in December after his book has come out. I've got in my possession for the first time the uncropped Roswell photos taken of the debris. And I say to Bill point blank, this is a kite of aluminum foil. You can actually see the sun-charred balloon debris decaying there. Mogul was a large balloon array, a spy device launched against Russia 10 years before Sputnik, okay, to spy on the Russians. It was as classified as the Manhattan Project of World War II. And when it was declassified, the government didn't say, oh, sorry, folks, that was us. No, government doesn't care. They use UFOs to lie to the public all the time as cover for whatever they think they should be doing. The Tic Tacs are another example. We'll prove that later this year. I'm not going to shoot that cannon off right now. So what happened is I take these photos to Stan, and he knows I had been with Bill Moore. The article was in there. He was not happy. It was Bill and I, not Stan and I. And he says, yeah, there must have been a debris switch. I'm like, what? Are you like kidding? Are you clowning me, type thing? He says, it's the only way to explain it. I'm like, oh my God. I said, Stan, I've seen this photo in Look magazine from the 60s on a special on UFOs from Look magazine. I've got it at home, okay? This is a photo showing Irving Newton, the weather officer, holding the debris. And he told Ramey in front of Marcel, no, it's a weather balloon, meaning it's a weather balloon, meaning it's got a radar reflector. It was a spy device, but it used unclassified components. It used the same balloon technology, although they made it a constant level balloon, so it would float at relatively stable altitudes up in the atmosphere, because there is a natural acoustic sound channel that goes around the Earth. You can literally hear volcanoes or loud explosions going off around the world in the upper atmosphere because they circle the Earth. It's a phenomenon that scientists have observed for a long time. And they were, catching a ride along the acoustical sound wave altitudes, trying to listen for evidence that the Russians had exploded a nuke. Because if they knew we were spying on them, they would move their tests underground, and we didn't want that. Common friggin' sense. So I was there when Friedman, lied about the Hill case when I confronted him with the Atterberg data. I have those files. You can't deny they're there unless you lie. And I was also there with the photos of the uncropped debris, saw the text in the Ramey memo, analyzed it with the other original Roswell researcher. We showed that there was nothing there, contrary to the nonsense that's been on the web for years. And I have to laugh that it's an original discovery. Yeah, well, we originally found it. And it went downhill from there. And I told Bill Moore, I've got real problems with Stan, and he was starting. And what happened was it went downhill from there. And so that caused a between Stan and I. So what happened is I'm finding out that the publishers are going to release Roswell books to exploit the 50th anniversary of the myth. And Prometheus Books isn't doing any Roswell book, and that bothers me. So I said, I'll write up my book, The Roswell UFO Crash, What They Don't Want You to Know. That ended up being the title, and it exposed the top 22 books that account for most of the people's knowledge on the case. And so what happened is it came out, became the best-selling expose of all time on Roswell, for better or for worse. And, of course, it got attacked by the UFO believers. And that caused me to go ahead and release some videos to prove that before the public, that these people can't be trusted. So what happened is, last week, Kevin Randall attacked my book. And I was surprised because what he attacked it over was already explained last century. Either he didn't know or he's not remembered it. So I'm going to set the record here. Kevin Randall said that I said there were no black sergeants at Roswell, New Mexico. What he's talking about is a sentence in the book that was missing 3 key words. I've always been clear about that. Basically, when I checked into the issue of black sergeants at Roswell, studying specifically the claims of Melvin Brown, who said he'd seen alien bodies and so on, I was able to prove that Melvin Brown was never a witness. You can't say that because he died before anybody talked to him. That his daughter, Beverly Bean, made the stuff up. Nobody else in the family supports the story. And Kevin is right when he says that Friedman inserted his own words by saying it was a black sergeant because he was trying to justify and explain Gerald Anderson's hoax, where he claimed there was a black sergeant. Well, the military was segregated back then. There were no black sergeants involved in Roswell, and that's the way the sentence was supposed to read, but it didn't. It made it imply there were none at all. To this day, I challenge anybody to come up with a single black sergeant that was involved in the Roswell UFO cover-up. You can't because it never happened. There was no such thing. There was only one other mistake in the book, and it was very small, and that is that the V1 and V2 rocket weapons from the Germans were called the buzz bomb. No, there wasn't. The V1 was different than the V2. So it was a typo. Excuse me, I'm human. I've been very clear on this. So what I did is I challenged people to do this. Take any book on Roswell, including those by Kevin Randall. I did these videos, 27 of them years ago. And open up any page at random like I did in front of the camera. And I was able to destroy at least one claim per page at random in all 3 of his top books. And you can still do this to this day. In fact, take my book and tear out every page that has been proven not to be true versus any other book on Roswell. And you'll see that my book stands and theirs don't. Because after all these decades, there's no aliens. Mossad isn't having its agents steal the secret Roswell metals. They're not stealing the Roswell files. Mossad doesn't give a rip about UFOs. And Mossad is the top intelligence entity on the planet by far. If Mossad doesn't care about the cosmic Watergate, then that's kind of proof that it's really a cosmic watermelon. Because Mossad would be very concerned about UFOs if the U.S. government had aliens stuffed away in pickle jars at Area 51. So I'll debate on Roswell anywhere, anytime, any place for any of the main authors. I don't fear anybody in a debate, and I don't debate subjects that I can't speak with authority on. That's a simple rule I follow, and I think it's the right rule. But I just wanted to correct this and point out this record and let you know that this is the proper perspective, the right perspective on a different perspective where it concerns that one issue. And I'm happy to dust off all this stuff again and go through those books again and cite page after page after page of what is wrong, and people can verify it. But I'd rather focus on other cases. Been there, done that. Let's move forward, like with the Annie Jacobson expose, which is going to come out anytime now, followed by the Hill expose, Bob Lazar expose, and a bunch of stuff. What matters is that we find the truth, that anybody can verify the truth, because the greatest thing about facts is that anybody can check them. They don't care about people's opinions. We'll be back next week for another show. Thank you.